Welcome to the Greater Houston Partnerships virtual series for COVID-19. Another one of our Houston Business Forums. We're going to give it just a moment for everyone to join the program. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and let you view our resources page. We've got quite a bit of content here. You can take a picture or a screenshot of your screen to hold on to that information. Today we're featuring Patrick Jankowski, the Partnership's Senior Vice President of Research. He'll be delivering his third economic update during this COVID-19 series. So we'll get started in just a moment. We'll just wait for everyone to join us. All right, well, people are still joining us, so we'll just go over some quick updates before we introduce Patrick Jankowski, our speaker for today. And please excuse if you hear any thunder in the background. That is not an effect. That's actually Houston weather right now, because I have a feeling that's going to happen here in just a couple of minutes. But again, good afternoon. Welcome back to our COVID-19 Houston Business Forum virtual event series. Patrick Jankowski, the Partnership's Senior Vice President of Research, will be our guest speaker today, talking about this is actually his third update on the economy, Houston's economy and global economy. And you know, what you see in front of you is something that we want to make sure all of our members have access to on a regular basis. We've actually added more resources for members and for the business community, including this series. So I hope many of you have already had a chance to tune in to our COVID-19 Business Forum webinars over the last month. It offers our members and the business community at large presentations with local experts, Patrick being one of those, discussing the latest information. Recordings of all of our events, all of these virtual events are on our website at houston.org. And you can find that at that houston.org/coronavirus, or just go to our homepage and it will direct you there. There's also a lot of new developments every day, and therefore the partnership's making those updates to our website. So please do check back on a regular basis to find information on public policy updates, economic, health, financial, and small business resources. In fact, yesterday, the partnership issued an all-member notice regarding Governor Abbott's recent order on Open Texas, and you can find that on our website, as well as through our partnership daily briefing email, where we did go over some of those details. And also mark your calendars, because this Thursday, April 30th, you can join us for a web session with our CEO, Bob Harvey, along with our Senior Vice President of Public Policy, Taylor Landine, and we'll be discussing the plan and the executive order and what it means for Houston as we start our Reopen Houston process. We're also going to update our WorkSafe program, so you'll see the website there for our WorkSafe. This will provide recommendations for how employers can reopen responsibly this week. We also have a business barometer. So as we, each day or as part of our weekly exercise, we do try to take a pulse for the business community, and you can find the results of those business barometers on our website. If you want to re-engage with the partnership, we do have several activities for you to get involved in, and these are beyond just our normal COVID-19 webinar sessions. Our business resource groups are now reconvening, and they'll help with more interactive small group sessions of a lot of business development activities going on there, as well as other resources for some of our gathering groups. We also have our councils. Our councils are open and available for lunch and learns every Tuesday. And last week we talked about mental health and awareness. And then if you're starting to get a little bit tired of the webinars, we have podcasts as well. Patrick Jankowski is active on our Bayou Business Download. We also have our Small Biz Insider podcast. So you can get information on all of these on our website as well. Now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to Patrick Jankowski. He is our featured speaker today. Patrick is going to be talking about the latest on our economy, and he will be taking questions at the end if time allows. But in the meantime, if you could submit your questions to Patrick on the Q&A bar at the bottom, because he also has his team in the background that will be answering questions during the session. And then again, if we have time, he'll answer those questions live through a moderated discussion. You can also chat with us, let us know if you're having any difficulties on your screen, and you can also raise your hand virtually, and someone from the team will send a private message and be able to answer your question. So if I can have Patrick go ahead and join us, and he'll be pulling his screen in here in just a moment. Patrick leads one of the partnership's kind of best research teams in town, I should say, and he also produces our Houston Economy at a Glance report. If you haven't signed up for that, recommend that you do that, as well as our key economic indicators. All right, great. So Patrick, we'll go ahead and turn things over to you.
Okay, Carrie. I want to make sure that everyone can hear me. So Carrie, can you somehow indicate that you can hear me, please?
I can hear you loud and clear, Patrick. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I want to thank everybody for tuning in again for this, the third webinar we're doing on the COVID-19 virus and WTI. And I hope that you're getting some insights that you can use to help you understand what's going on in the community and hopefully make some better informed business decisions, or at least have a better grasp of what we're facing in Houston over the next few months and perhaps even a few years. So I'd like to start the way I always start. Number of confirmed cases. This was as of 9 o'clock last night. 3 million confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the world, 210,000 deaths. The US accounts for about a third of the confirmed cases, just over a million confirmed cases, maybe about a fourth of the deaths, 56,521. And then let's get to where we are in Houston. And you can see where we've been over the last roughly month, going back from March 22nd, where we had just 144 cases, where we were on the 26th, and that was just 8,300 cases. When I say Metro Houston, this is for the for the 8-county area, the Austin, Brazoria, Chambers, Fort Bend, Galveston, Harris, Liberty, Montgomery, and Waller counties. So it's a grouping together of all those counties. So you can see that's the metro area. You definitely see a trend up, but you also see maybe just a little bit of a flattening towards the very end. Let's talk about the impact that COVID's having on the economy. I put up a headline from Fox Business. US GDP, US gross domestic product, expected to fall 12%, federal deficit to reach 3.7 trillion, according to the CBO. CBO, so you know, stands for the Congressional Budget Office. That's the nonpartisan, the agency assigned to provide unbiased research to Congress when they ask certain questions and study issues and so forth. It's just it's the equivalent of their research team for Congress, and they study issues. And so they're the ones who said that we were looking at perhaps a 12% drop in GDP this year. It's not surprising that they're seeing that big a drop. If you look at the key economic indicators that have come out since we spoke 2 weeks ago, you can see that durable goods orders are down, housing starts, industrial production, new home sales, retail sales. I put where the S&P is from its peak in 2020, and you can see that it's down in vehicle sales. When I look at these, all the numbers are a bit concerned, but I guess maybe the two that I worry about the most is when I see that housing starts are down by almost a fourth and that vehicle sales are down by a third. That's two things. On one hand, it's industrial production and construction. It's good producing it. We're seeing drop off. But it's also a bit of a sign of consumer confidence or consumer apprehension. Because most consumers aren't going to buy a car, or they're not going to buy a house if they're worried about being able to make the notes, make the payments. To give you some idea of where we are on initial claims for unemployment in the US, I've got data, I've been able to find it through April of 18th. And you can look, the little yellow bar is 2019, the taller blue bar is 2020. Those 4-digit numbers at the top, those are actually abbreviated. You need to drop 3 zeros after them. Now, you'll see that if you look over on the key on the left-hand side. So it's not 4,427, it's actually 4,427,000. So you add all this together and you're coming up with over 22 million initial claims for unemployment insurance in the US. We've unfortunately lost all the jobs that we have created since the end of the Great Recession. It looks like maybe unemployment insurance claims are trending down. They may be trending down, but I'm still getting reports, both from personal friends of mine who have lost work, and from what I'm reading in the press, and from what I'm talking to the economists, that there's still difficulty getting in to file unemployment insurance claims. And so I expect insurance claims, even if we open back up soon, or as we open back up, I still expect to see an elevated level of unemployment insurance claims across the US and in Texas and in Houston. The Texas Tribune read a very apropos headline: more than 1 million people in Texas filed for unemployment in the last month. If you want to see how that looks in a graph, you've got it right there. Now, these are actual numbers. You don't need to drop any zeros behind this. But you can look and see the green bar versus the red bar. The green bar was last year. The red bar is this year. And you can see how much initial claims for unemployment insurance have risen since March 14th. You add all this together, you do get over 1 million. And a little bit of a concern is the last week, claims actually shot up. They weren't trending down like we hoped they would. So there's still a lot of pain out there. There's still a lot of people who aren't working. There are people who are just recently getting laid off. So we're going to continue to see an elevated level of unemployment insurance claims for at least the next few weeks. I did find data that tells you where the layoffs have occurred. These are the self-declared people who have lost their job, and they're asked, where were you working, what industry? Not quite as up to date as the earlier chart, because they haven't got the detailed breakdown yet. But you can see in the state of Texas, and there's no reason to think this would be any different from Houston. It would be the same order of magnitude, or roughly the same hierarchy of ranking. You can see hotels, people who work in hotels, restaurants, and bars. They've been affected by social distancing and by the shutdown. Retail, trade, healthcare, those three sectors account for almost half of the layoffs. Retail trade, because the stores are closed, although it looks like we're going to have some drive-by retail. Or retail, we have drive-by retail now. I guess we're going to have retail to go on Friday. We're slowly bringing retail back. Healthcare, there are lots of healthcare practitioners that have had to shut down their offices. But you can go on down and you can look at the list and you can see where the impacts have been. Administrative support, so you'll know that's the category in which contract workers fall, where a company is contracted with an agency to provide them with someone either to work on a production line, to provide contract CPA work, maybe to work a banquet. And so when the economy is so bad, you let your contract workers go, and that's where that category is. But you can pretty much see that we're losing jobs across the board. I guess my one surprise in this is that the losses in mining aren't more severe. Mining is a category in which oil and gas exploration, oil field services falls into. I would expect that we'll start to see that pick up. It may be that the layoffs are slow to manifest themselves. So once again, what I'm showing you is data on unemployment insurance claims and where people are saying they were working prior to being laid off. We still do not have numbers for the number of jobs that have actually been lost in Texas or in Houston because of the lag in the data. The March numbers that we have cover the way they ask for it when their survey is done. They want to know how many people are on payroll for the pay period that included the 12th day of the month. Let me make that simple for you. Most of the data that you see is for people working the first half of March. And as we know, the layoffs didn't start the second half of March. So when we got the March data a week ago, it really wasn't that good an indicator. It won't be until we get the April data, and the April data won't be available until nearly a month from now, that we'll see just how severe the job losses were. And I expect they're going to be pretty severe. If you want to look at unemployment insurance claims from metropolitan Houston, that's what you see on the screen right now. The red bar was last year, the blue bar is this year, the corresponding weeks. Some of the data hasn't been published for the metro area, but what I did is went ahead and did some estimating based on if Texas claims are trending this way, and Houston is approximately 22% of the Texas workforce, what would be happening? And that's where you get those last two numbers that you see with the little asterisk, the little partnership estimate. And I've done this for a couple of weeks now, and have actually been fairly close to what actually gets reported. So I feel fairly comfortable with these numbers. But you add all those numbers up, and we're looking at close to 400,000 initial claims for unemployment insurance have been filed since the beginning of March. I need to be real careful with this. We have unemployment insurance claims filed, and it's real easy. We tend to think that that's going to equal the total number of job losses. Well, on one hand, there's still some confusion of whether gig workers or self-employed can file for these claims. On the other hand, you have people who file for claims who do not qualify, but they were going to file anyway to see if they could get it. But as far as order of magnitude, whether it's 400,000 or 300,000, it's going to fall somewhere in that range. We have lost a significant number of jobs in the Houston region since the beginning of March. So I put this chart up. I'm using this in all my presentations now because I keep on getting asked the questions. What is this going to be like? Is this going to be worse than the Great Recession? Or is this going to be another go-around like we had during the 80s where we had the energy bust? And you can look and see in the energy bust, we lost 226,000 jobs. That was 1 in every 7 jobs in the Houston region was lost then. If you go back, you can look at the 08-09, which is what we also refer to as the Great Recession. We lost 4.5% of all jobs. That's roughly 1 in every 22 jobs. And right now we are falling somewhere. It is definitely a worse downturn than the Great Recession. I have no doubt about that. And we are approaching the level of layoffs that we had during the energy bust. And that's a concern. So one thing you need to understand is the economy is a lot larger than we were in the 80s by a factor of at least 3. We're probably a factor of at least 2 than we were from the Great Recession. So it takes more job losses to equal that percentage. And you're going to see it there. The Great Recession, if we were going to lose 4.5% of jobs today, that would be 142,000 jobs lost. Based on those initial 400,000 unemployment insurance claims that were filed, I have no doubt we've surpassed that. The energy bust of the 80s, that'd be 417,000. So you can see the initial claims, I'd write us at 398,000. So we're not quite to where we were at this point in the down cycle, at this point in the layoffs. And you probably might need to shave a little bit off that 398 for duplicate claims or claims that don't get allowed. Someone told me at one point, 75 to 8% of the initial claims are disallowed. I don't have a data point for that. All I know is it was something someone told me. I'm always reluctant to pass something along that I can't confirm through official channels or through a database or something. But we are definitely suffering through a downturn, which is worse than the Great Recession. And we're approaching something that's like the energy bust. And I want to go back to my previous slide because I want you to go back and look at that second column from the right, duration. It took us 58 months to lose all those jobs in the 80s. It took us 16 months to lose all these jobs in the Great Recession. It's taken us 1 month and a couple days to get where we are now. This has been one of the fastest, most precipitous downturns that Houston has ever seen. So let me move on. Let's talk about unemployment because I get that question. People like dashboard sort of numbers. They like headline sort of numbers that gives them some idea of what's happening out there. I want to stop though before I give you some insights into what the actual unemployment number might be to be counted as unemployed, you have to actually be looking for work. You can't be not working and not looking for work. They want you looking for work, because if you're looking for work, the way the methodology goes, that means you are in the workforce. And the unemployment base is a measure, the unemployment rate is a measure of how many people are in the workforce, are looking for work, but have not been able to find it. There may be some people out there who say, I'm not going to look for work because I know things are so bad. Why bother? Or you may have some people say, I'm not going to look for work because I'm collecting my unemployment and I deserve a vacation. Or you may have people who are not going to look for work because they decide that they're going to go back to school or do some other reason. So we could actually see a situation where the unemployment rate does not truly reflect the number of people who aren't working, but it'll reflect the number of people who aren't working who want to work. And the other thing is you need to understand is the unemployment rate is not based on unemployment insurance claims. They don't sit there and do the math and say, well, we have this many people who file claims, let's do some math. It's actually based on a survey. It's a survey that the US Census Bureau runs on a regular basis once a month. It's something called the household survey. They gather data over the internet. They actually mail out some forms. They get people on the phone. And they ask questions about people working in the house and whether they've been looking for work or whether they're actively working and so forth. So it's based on a survey. So you need to understand, when we look at employment numbers, when we get those numbers in May, they're going to be based on a survey of establishments. The unemployment rate is going to be based on a survey of households. That said, I want you to pay attention, please, 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 to the very top bar that you're going to see. This is not a forecast. This is not a forecast of unemployment. This is maybe finger painting, back of the envelope. This is just trying to give you some idea of what the employment rate could be trending towards. Now you can read that top bar, that 100,000 jobs lost. Okay, that would put us at an unemployment rate of 8%. 200,000 jobs lost would put us close to 11%. 300,000 jobs, and I'm fairly confident we've probably lost pretty close to 300,000 jobs, would put us at an unemployment rate of 13.8%. 400,000 jobs, and I hope we don't get there, would put us at 16.7%. And there's some discussion out there on the national level. I've heard and talked to people about the US unemployment rate might get up to 20%. I even heard 30%. I totally dismiss that because that's scaremongering. But I can definitely see Houston's unemployment rate somewhere in the mid-teens. I can definitely see this unemployment rate being the highest it's ever been on record. The question which I'm going to be looking over and looking into the next few weeks and trying to understand is how long will it take to bring that rate down as we come back to work, as people go back to the restaurants, as we open back up. We got here within a matter of weeks. We're not going to get out of here in a matter of weeks, but we will get out of here. So once again, please, when you see this chart, these slides are available online, and you're going to see this. We post this on YouTube and so forth. Please don't come out and say the partnership's forecasting a 16.7% unemployment rate. What we're saying is that if we've lost 400,000 jobs, we will have a rate in that level. So let's talk about GDP, gross domestic product. It's probably the best indicator, the broadest indicator. It's another one of those big kind of headline type numbers. It gives you some idea of just how large the economy and how it's trending. If you want to get some idea as a precursor, this is a survey that we did last week when we were trying to get some insight as to what's going on. We've been running 2 surveys. We were trying to use this to try to offer some guidance and some insight to elected officials as to what's impacting the economy and where we are. One of the questions was, what % of your operations are active today? Just look at the far left-hand bar, that orange bar. It says 27.9%. So what that is saying is that 27.9% of all the companies that responded to the survey, they're operating at 100%. So basically, about a fourth of Houston's firms are operating at 100%. Everyone else is operating at somewhere less. Now it's good, you can go over to that next bar and you can see, well, between 75 and 100% are operating close to 30%. But you're looking at, if you go to that far right-hand side, you're looking at about a fourth to a third of the businesses out there operating at less than 50%. When you see so few firms operating at their capacity, at their potential, that's going to have an impact on GDP. That's going to show up in the numbers. We asked a question. This is a different survey that we were running. Whether they've shut down whole or partial operations. You can see 62% of the restaurants and the hotels have shut down partially or wholly. You can see what happens in transportation, in the nonprofit, government, education sector, and so forth. At this point, only the energy sector hadn't shut down. I'm wondering if maybe they're not answering the survey, because from what I can tell, just by reading the Houston Chronicle and Houston Business Journal, I'm reading about the layoffs. And as I'm talking to people, I'm hearing about the layoffs and the shutdowns. One more slide like this, give you some idea of the pain, the impact in the economy. These are the percent of firms, of the respondents that have instituted layoffs or furloughs. And even goods producers, it's fairly high. Goods producers are going to be those who are in some sort of manufacturing or some sort of construction. So a fourth of the companies who responded to our survey said they have reduced or they have laid off or furloughed employees out there. So when you see numbers like this, it helps you get an appreciation for just how severe the impact is going to be on the economy. I almost use the word damage. Maybe I should say the word damage, because this downturn has definitely damaged the economy in this second quarter. So what I have is, I've got one more chart. Let me show you that chart. That gives you reduced wages. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had that chart, and gives you some idea how much wages have been reduced. So you reduce wages, then the consumers don't have the purchasing power to go out. They have purchasing power to go out and buy groceries, hopefully, and the necessities, but they don't have purchasing power to buy anything else. Which gets me to this chart. That was the one I thought I had coming up next. This is data. I need to let you know, this is from Ray Perryman. I cited his data in the previous presentation. Ray Perryman has been studying the US economy, the Texas economy, and Houston's economy going all the way back to 80s. He built one of the first econometric models for Texas. He actually did a lot of forecasting what was going on in the 80s with the downturn. And these are Perryman's estimates about what's going to happen to Houston's GDP this year. And this isn't for this quarter. This is how he expects the year to end up. And you can see, obviously, the biggest impact is the mining. That's our energy industry. But you can see every sector here is impacted except for government. I'll let you know that's probably one of the places I take exception with this analysis of Ray's. He's a brilliant man, but I think we're going to see a downturn in the government sector as well, because we're going to see less sales tax revenues, and we're probably going to see less property tax collections and franchise taxes and other sources of revenues. But if you look at the very bottom, we're looking at a $50 billion hit to the economy this year. If you like round numbers, a $50 billion hit and a 10% reduction in GDP is what we're looking at. We are probably going to endure in 2020. So actually what we're facing right now is it's a double black swan event. It's a term that's becoming more and more popular. Black swans it goes back a couple centuries when people thought black swans didn't exist, so they dismissed them. And then when they did exist, they said, oh, well, we should have seen that. We should have known they could have existed. That's kind of the old history of it. A black swan event is referred to something which is unseen, unable to forecast, but has an extremely severe impact. And in hindsight, you say, yeah, probably we should have seen that. Well, COVID-19 is one black swan event. We've had people warning us about a possible pandemic for a while. People have just dismissed it unless you're somebody who likes apocalyptic literature like my wife does. But the other black swan event. The other black swan event is the drop in oil prices. Something we should have seen coming, and it's actually much more severe than we thought it would be. We knew that we were overproducing. We knew that OPEC was trying to ratchet back production, a few million barrels here, a few million barrels there, but they haven't been able to ratchet back enough. And that's the reason why we're seeing the world's oil forecasts to suffer the biggest drop ever. We consume globally prior to the pandemic downturn, about 100 million barrels a day. And once again, there's a data lag. We don't know exactly how much consumption has been reduced. but I keep on hearing reports, I keep on talking to people, and they're saying between 25 and 30 million barrels a day. So a 25 to 30% reduction in demand. And so think about it, the US produces about 13 million barrels a day right now. We could eliminate the entire US production and the world oil market still not be balanced. Saudi Arabia's been producing around 10 million barrels a day. We could eliminate all of Saudi's oil production, and right now the world still wouldn't be balanced. Now, right now, we're starting to see some wells shut in. We're seeing wells shut in the US, and we're starting to see wells shut in overseas, but they're not being shut in fast enough. We're continuing to pump. That was one of the reasons why we had that issue with negative oil prices last Monday, because people were looking that they're going to have to take ownership of oil and they had nowhere to store it because storage is filling up and that's where the surplus is going. And that's why you had a chart that looked like this where we actually had negative oil prices. You had people who were buying oil as a financial instrument, not to process it. And typically what they do is they sell the title to that oil to someone else so they never have to take title of it. But with no storage, no one wanted to take title to the oil. No one wanted to take it off their hands. And so you had these financial dealers, not oil companies and not refiners, trying to find someone, please, please, please take my oil. And that's why you saw oil prices go negative, because they're trying to find someone to physically take the oil. I'm starting to hear rumblings that we may hit a similar situation in May if production doesn't drop off anymore. So we'll see what happens in May. So I want you to think of this, prices in classic economic terms, prices are a signal. When prices are rising, it's telling producers we need more. When prices are rising, it says the consumers want more, whatever you're selling. So supply me with more. When prices are stable, that's telling producers we have enough. Consumers' demand is satiated. And when prices are falling, that's a sign that we have too much and you need to stop producing. And that's where we're seeing the prices are sending a signal to the market that we have too much oil. You guys need to stop producing. It's easy for me to say this, sitting in my house over here off Gary Ashford, and the signal I know is getting out to the market. It's just things take a long time to happen. There are lags, and we're continue to overproduce. But the refiners aren't buying it. The refiners don't need it. What you're looking at there is a chart. It's showing U.S. refinery capital utilization. I touched upon this last time. Most refiners want to run above 90% of their design capacity. They really like it when they're above 95% because they're making good money. They've got really nice margins there. But if the demand isn't there, if people aren't driving, if people aren't flying, if not as many goods are being picked up or delivered from the factories, the demand for diesel goes down, the demand for aviation goes down, the demand for gasoline goes down. And you can see, when you look at that far right-hand side, you can see right now, U.S. refinery capital utilization, it's about 2/3 of what it should be. Refinery capital utilization capacity, it's about 67%. It really should be somewhere above 90. And I put that little bar on there. You can see Hurricane Harvey. Actually, we are running at less now than we were running immediately after Hurricane Harvey. Gives you some idea of just how severe the drop-off in the demand for refined products is. So this morning, I went and looked. I went to Bloomberg to find out what oil was selling for, and at 9 a.m. it was selling for $12.62 a barrel. I mean, that's amazing. 42 gallons for $22.62. God, I'm trying to remember my college days. How much beer is in a keg? But no, I'm digressing. $12.62 for a barrel. That doesn't cover much of anything, guys. If you want to look at it, I show this chart all the time. I need to drive it home. And the top tier is in which your firm is active. What WTI oil price does your firm need to profitably drill a well? This is a survey the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas does. They did it, and the last time they surveyed in March, just prior to the downturn, you can look at the line there, guys. You can look at the numbers. Most companies need oil above $50 a barrel to profitably drill a new well. Oil below $13 a barrel is not going to be enough for anybody to drill any new wells. And so you're seeing the rig count plummeting. It's fallen 50% from its recent peak. You can see where we were back in 2014. That was the height of the fracking boom. That's when we had the Eagle Ford Shale and Permian was just coming on. And we had close to 2,000 rigs working in the US. Now we have barely 400 working in the US. And it's likely to continue to fall further because no one is going to be able to drill a well profitably at the current prices, especially with prices where they are right now. So the layoffs have begun. And went online, I've got a great researcher in the department, Elizabeth Balderrama, went and pulled some data for me. We tried to look and find companies that have announced layoffs, and every logo there you see is a company in Houston which has announced a layoff or furlough or somehow let people go. Most of those names you recognize, and it's very interesting as I look at the list, as you look at the list, there's something that stands out for me when I look at this list. Almost every company that you see on that list is an oil field service company or an equipment supplier. There are only two on there that are actual E&P firms, well, three that are E&P firms, exploration production firms. This is the way the cycle tends to fall in the oil and gas industry. The expression is the closer you are to the drill bit, the more you're at risk. This is the way we saw it play out in the 80s, and it's the way we saw it play out in the fracking bust. The first people to lose their jobs are those in the field, the blue collar workers. Eventually, when we're drilling fewer wells, you don't need as many crews, you don't need as many replacement parts, you don't need to build any new rigs. So the next wave of layoffs occurs in the manufacturing sector. And then after that, after you realize you're drilling a lot fewer wells, you have a lot fewer things to manage outside of Houston, that's when the white collar layoffs start. And that's my concern. I've heard arguments on both sides, one saying it's going to be very severe. We're going to see layoffs deeply on the white collar side. I've heard other people say, well, these companies know that this isn't going to be permanent. They're going to try to maintain skeleton crews. More in the camp, I think we're going to have some significant layoffs in the industry. And I hope that I'm just real concerned about this. This is something I've talked about. Intellectually, I can get my head around the fact that we're having lots of layoffs. Just emotionally, as a native Houstonian and someone who's put a lot of his career trying to build up the city, it really does hurt to see these sort of layoffs. So once again, let me go back to the $12.62 a barrel. And this is one of the reasons why I'm really concerned about the layoffs and the bankruptcies. This is another question. I shared this in the last presentation. What does it take to produce oil? You've already got the well drilled, it's already producing, but there are costs to run the well and to maintain it. And at $13 a barrel, these companies aren't even making enough money to cover their operating costs. And this is where you're going to start seeing the layoffs because they're losing money for every barrel they produce, so they're going to have to shut in. They have no cash flow. We managed to make it through part of 15 and 16 because the capital markets were open and Wall Street and the bankers and the private equity firms were willing to lend money to keep the industry alive. But when you're looking at oil prices 2 years from now, still being barely at the cost to cover production, cost to operate, you're not going to see a whole lot of new production coming online, which gets us to this chart. This is a chart that I borrowed from Tudor, Pickering, and Holt, and it's showing the leverage, the amount of debt that has been taken on and that comes due. 2020 isn't that bad, but if you look at 2021, next year, we're looking at $10 billion worth of debt coming online, coming due. If you look at 2022, you're looking at close to 15 million. So we have close to $25 billion worth of debt maturing. And at these current oil prices, these firms can't service their debt. I know some firms have gone and have been willing to sell their debt back to the firms at a discount because they want something now rather than nothing later. But when we talk about or we're concerned about bankruptcies, this is one of the big concerns, is that these companies have a substantial amount of debt that they're not going to be able to pay. So as the headline in Houston Business Journal said, the oilfield services sector, it's only the first wave of layoffs. I expect we're going to see more layoffs over the next few months. So what does this mean for Houston, guys? I'm looking at the clock. I know I'm going a little bit long, but I ask you to please bear with me because I'm trying to give you some good details and some good insights. A lot of numbers on this chart, but what I'm trying to do is get some appreciation for the fact that energy embraces not just exploration production and oil field services, but there's pipeline construction, there's chemical manufacturing, there's compressor manufacturing, engineering services, and geophysical. So that question is, how dependent is Houston on energy? This is the first step in answering that question. If you look, energy, as defined here, accounts for 1 in every 10 jobs in the region. You could see that with that green circle. You go to that blue circle, but the energy jobs pay, on average, twice what any other job in Houston pays. You go to that third red circle, and you can see right there, these energy jobs account for about 1/5 of total wages paid. Now you understand, I pulled this from the second quarter of last year. That's back when the industry was fairly stable. More stable than it is now. I suspect that that percent will be a lot higher if I pulled it in the fourth quarter where bonuses are figured in. Of course, there are not going to be any bonuses this year. What this doesn't show is the accounting firms, the law firms, the marketing firms, all the other agencies and organizations that somehow are tied to the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry, one of the things they did in the 80s is they outsourced a lot of stuff. Rather than having internal accounting departments, they outsourced their accounting functions to some of the big four. Same thing with some of the legal work. And so the oil and gas employment goes well beyond this. I'm real comfortable saying we probably have 1/3 of Houston's economy is directly tied to oil and gas. And when I talk about these additional jobs, there's this concept out there called a multiplier, and that's what you're seeing on the screen. There is a model that the partnership runs whenever we are successful in bringing a company to Houston. We run it through the model to try to figure out, okay, this company says it's going to create 1,000 jobs. What does that mean for the rest of the region? It also works in reverse. If we lose 1,000 jobs, what does it mean for the region? Now you're looking at those columns, you see direct, that's the jobs in an oil company or an exploration firm or an oil field service company. Indirect are the jobs in Houston which are necessary to support that. You see the indirect, it's only 434 for exploration production. That's because mainly that top line, the E&P jobs, those are all office jobs. So it doesn't take a lot of input in Houston to support the office jobs. But go over to that induced line, those are the jobs in the restaurants and in the bars and in the retail, in the car dealerships, in the daycare, and at the ballet and at the Astros and so forth. The oil companies pay so well that their employees have lots of money to spend in Houston. And that's why you get, when you see a gain of 1,000 jobs or a loss of 1,000 jobs, there's potentially 3,700 jobs impacted. Now you need to know that 3,700, that includes that first 1,000 jobs plus the extra 270. But it's easy to see something like this and say, if you lose one job in the energy sector, you've probably lost 3 jobs. And that's where the concern is. So will this be a repeat of the 80s? I'll go through these fairly quickly because some of you in the real estate community have heard me say this before. I know you're probably tired of me saying it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about just where the 80s were and where we are today. The 80s was very different. The 80s was an oil price collapse and an overbuilt real estate market and a savings and loan crisis and massive banking failures. Today, we just have this oil price collapse and we have an overbuilt real estate market, but we also have this big unknown with COVID-19. And that's part of that black swan. But if you kind of want to look at the office market today, 1/4 of all space out there is available. 61 million square feet of available space. Now, not all that is leasable, but probably half of it is. We'll see 9 out of the last 6 quarters have negative absorption. We have 3.4 million square feet under construction. It's going to be a long time before the office market gets back under 20% availability. If we want to look at warehouse industrial space, if you want to look at Class A vacancy, the prime stuff which is being built now, what I'm told from the real estate community, that's what people want to lease. Well, the vacancy rate there over the last year has gone from 10.161% to 16.7%. 18 million square feet under construction. Asking rates have been flat for the last almost 2 years. So, prices are a signal. If asking rates aren't going up, that's a sign that maybe we have enough. But we still have 18 million square feet in construction, especially with the slowdown in global trade and the slowdown in the oil and gas industry. We're looking to be dramatically overbuilt in industrial as well. Multifamily, roughly a 90% vacancy rate, 16,000 units built over the last 12 months, another 25,000 under construction. We're looking at adding close to, what is that, 42,000 apartment units over a very short period of time. We don't have the population growth to sustain that. Our population growth has slowed. That's something I'll talk about on the next webinar. And we are not going to be the jobs magnet that we were in the past because of what's going on in the oil and gas industry. We're probably overbuilt in multifamily as well, guys. So I can't leave totally depressed. You know, there's got to be a ray of shine sign poking somewhere through the clouds. And I want to give you a ray of shine. That is, we are starting to reopen. Hopefully you saw the headlines, the news stories that Governor Abbott announced. There are businesses that can and can't open May 1st. And so we are slowly, this is the first step, the baby step of getting back to normal. There are some things that are needed. We did a survey of our members. This goes back to what was needed. There's still this big need for universal testing, for ending social distancing restrictions, for protective equipment. And I want to focus on that ending social distancing restrictions comes up a lot. And you need to interpret that two ways. One is, well, you need to end social distancing restrictions so we can get back out in public, so we can go shopping, or we can go to the restaurants or the bars or the bowling alleys. But also, everyone is so apprehensive. I talk to my neighbor. She stands on one side of the driveway, and I stand on the other side of the driveway, and we talk. And what we're looking for, that lifting of social restrictions, is that's kind of like the all clear sign. That's like after the hurricane, you walk out and you see the blue sky and you go, okay, it's all clear. Things are over with. It's safe to come back out. And that's what we're really looking for in that social distancing. So one more, this is Ray Perryman. And I want you to focus on that far right-hand side. He does see growth in 2021. And you can see where the growth is there. And you see, we've got to get through this year. And by the end of next year, we will hopefully have made up for all the output losses that we've had as a result of COVID and the downturn in oil and gas. But the downturn in oil and gas won't make up for everything we lost. The growth is going to be coming from a number of other sectors. So my last slide, I was trying to think about how to end this, and I've been pondering this an awful lot. My wife and I talk all the time. My daughter and my son, they live around the corner from me. You know, what's life going to look like after all this? You know, we are going to have to change the way we do things. And I was thinking back, and some of you may remember the Tylenol scare of the 80s, where someone was going around putting cyanide inside Tylenol capsules. And the solution to that was we put safety seals on all medicines and also on many food products. And if the seal's broken, you don't take it, you don't swallow it. A little bit of an inconvenience, but we're all safer for it. I grew up in the age where seat belts were optional. You could buy a car with or without seat belts. But now seat belts are mandatory, and look at all the lives that have been saved by requiring seat belts. You get a ticket now if you don't have a seat belt. Same thing, I grew up in an era where you rode your bicycle without a helmet. And now we ride helmets. You don't ride your bicycle without a helmet. Look at all the lives been saved with that. Car seats. I was of the generation where I would sit. Sometimes I'd stand on the front seat next to my mom while she would drive. More than once I hit the dashboard. But mandatory car seats, for instance, and even the hassles that we have at the airport going through. At some point you may think all these things were intrusive, or maybe they were a hassle. But think how much safer we are as a result of adopting these. And so that's the question moving forward. We're going to experiment, we're going to find things, and we may complain about them as being intrusive or a hassle, but you know, we will make adaptations, and we will find safer ways to live and to get by and to interact. And so I just ask everybody to keep the faith and realize that we will get through this. Things will look different. We will make some changes, but we will have some semblance of normalcy eventually after all this is over with. With that, I'm done, Carrie. I know I talked a lot longer than I promised you I would, but I'll go ahead. I think we have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions if you want to send them my way.
Patrick, thank you. I don't think anyone is disappointed in you talking a little bit more, because there are just so many questions. And I know you can answer some of these. I think one of the questions I'd like to ask, because it's come up a couple of times in the Q&A bar, is leading indicators. So, you know, with shelter in place being somewhat lifted. Do you see that there are, certain indicators that might show light at the end of the tunnel at this point? Anything that would just pop out to say, okay, we've now turned a corner?
Yeah, there will be indicators out there. The problem is the lag between when the data is gathered and when it's published. An indicator will come out and will say that things are moving back to normal, and we will all know because of okay, I'm gonna be facetious. You know what the leading indicator is gonna be? It's gonna be my commute from Dairy Ashford to downtown. And if that gets any longer. If you start to see traffic picking up on the streets, that means people are out and about. They're shopping, they're going to restaurants, they're going to work. If you want a less facetious indicator, we should all be watching what happens with unemployment insurance claims. When we start to see them tracking down, that tells us the layoffs have abated. And there'll still be some layoffs, but the surges are with. We get sales tax collections will come in with about a 2-month lag. So we will get in May sales tax collections for March. So as we start to see sales tax collections pick back up, that will be an indicator. There's something called the Purchasing Managers Index, the PMI, which people have heard me present before. We talk about that a lot. I'd like to see that. That'll probably go down again significant in April, but when we start to see that pick back up, that will be a sign. Even something like refining utilization, that will tell us that there's more demand for fuels out there. And so we're starting to see an increase in refinery utilization. Those are just some of the general indicators. And I'm only half joking when I say traffic on the freeway, because that's a sign that people are going to work or they're going to conduct business.
Thanks, Patrick. I brought this slide up here for everyone. It's just to mark your calendars for May 27th. Patrick is going to be delivering his State of Houston's Global Economy Address. And in it, he'll talk a little bit more about the global economy and the impact on Houston and vice versa. But one of the questions, Patrick, we received was really on a macroeconomic forecast globally. I know we talk about Houston right now. But how does the U.S. and Houston compare to let's just say China and other countries? Where do we see? We've had the black swan event, as you've mentioned, but how do we compare?
Well, the global economy is so interconnected. We're definitely seeing slowdown in China. We sell stuff to China, they sell stuff to us. China's economy needs the rest of the world to pick up because we're their biggest customer. And as long as consumption in the U.S. is down, and Europe is down, China's economy is going to struggle. Vice versa, it's kind of a vicious cycle. We need activity in China to pick up so we can be selling more things to them. So our economy, the U.S. economy tends to fare better than a lot of other economies in downturns. We have a very aggressive Fed, a very aggressive central bank that's taking all sorts of actions. Without running some numbers, without doing some deep research, I really suspect the U.S. will recover sooner than the rest of the world. But when I say sooner, I don't know if I'm saying 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 quarters.
Patrick, thank you. This question comes up in probably every one of our webinars, and it is a very difficult one to answer. And I think we have addressed it, but maybe you could just shed some additional light on events, conventions, large meeting, gathering, large events. And I'm even thinking about entertainment venues and baseball. Wonder what are the parameters, since not much of that was brought up yesterday in the governor's press event, but what do we think that the state of the event hospitality industry will be for Houston? And that's probably a national question or an international question.
It comes down to when will people feel comfortable going out in a crowd with a crowd of strangers. That will be the big key thing. Well, when will we feel comfortable crowding at Minute Maid Park to get in the gate? When are we going to feel comfortable? So I can't forecast the date or the time. It comes down to consumer behavior. It comes down to how safe do you feel. You can look at it, there are other ways to look at this. How safer is my employer going to feel saying, I want you to get on a plane and fly for 4 hours to another city and I want you to be in a room with 500 strangers for 3 days, and then come on back to the office. I mean, that's one of the big unknowns. My concern is the hospitality industry, that side of it, may be one of the last recoverers, because people are going to be real apprehensive about being 1,000 miles from home in a city they don't know and maybe get sick. I wish I could tell you, the hospitality industry employs a lot of people in Houston. It's a very important industry, but there's just no good way to know. It's going to depend upon when do we feel comfortable associating in large groups of strangers, or is there something that can be done? Someone told me the restaurants are, one of the solutions for the restaurants is remove every other table. It may be that the way we mandate helmets for bike riders, maybe we mandate all tables in restaurants must be 6 feet apart. We really don't know yet, but that's going to be one of the latter sectors to fully recover.
Right. Housing market, we know we talked about the commercial real estate and residential real estate market, personal housing. You know, when do we see that impact? And then also, do we see a recovery? I would imagine it's probably phased, just like the other parts of the economy.
Now, of all the real estate markets, I probably feel best about the single family market. For one thing, the developers in this town and this builders are really good at watching market signals, and they're really good at developing a product which is either affordable or meets the need. Also, you're going to hit a point where people exhale and they realize, okay, my job is safe. I'm going to go ahead and sign that contract. So single family is not, it'll have a dip, but it is not going to suffer the same way the other markets will. It's kind of an unintended consequence. We've seen the listings fall off at the Houston Association of Realtors because people don't want to list their house during a pandemic, and some people don't want to go into a house during a pandemic. Well, supply and demand, you have fewer listings. Just anecdotally, I have a good friend who had a house that was on the market for 6 months, and so many listings are pulled off the market. Within a week, he had 3 offers, all above what he listed it at. So that's part of the challenge, is trying to figure this out. But I really think, though, single family is going to be the one sector that holds up the best of all the real estate markets.
Great. Patrick, thank you for your time this afternoon. I know that there are still some questions that are out there, and your team, I believe, will be staying on the webinar for a few minutes after we conclude. So they will try to answer some additional questions. Again, thanks for your time today. Patrick, this is not the only opportunity he has to share his insight. He also has a podcast, as well as provides economic updates through several of our online publications that you can have access to. So thank you all for joining us today. We have more coming up. On Thursday morning, we will host Bob Harvey, President and CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership, for his address. And we'll talk a little bit more about the governor's order, as well as some business development and membership related activities on Thursday at 9 o'clock with our Membership 101. We also are starting a new series with our workforce development group. Our Upskill Works will do a virtual forum series on current and future workforce challenges, and that'll be on Thursday as well. And then we have a Women's Business Alliance coffee talk, and we'll be talking about work-life balance. I'll leave this screen up for everyone as you are logging out. This is quite a few of our resources that are available to you right now, including member support. So if you have any questions about your membership or in general about anything that you haven't heard in our webinars, you can ask our membership team at member.engagement@houston.org. And again, we will be staying on the webinar for a few minutes to answer additional questions that you might have. So thank you so much again for joining us today, and we'll continue to bring you this information on a timely basis. Patrick, thank you. Thanks to the research team and the events team. Have a good day, everyone.